Well, happy St. Patrick's Day to you, folks. It is St. Patrick's Day on a Monday. So what's that mean? That means that if you're hungover, well, it's too bad. You're going to have to deal with it, right? That's the way St. Patrick's Day is. It's a day of having a good time. Doesn't mean you have to drink. It means that you can just be festive, right, David Hendsbee?
Top of the morning to you, Todd.
We don't have your mic on yet. There we go. Vanessa's got you. What are you thinking?
Well, top of the morning to you, Todd.
Yeah?
I guess some of the Irish pubs started quite early this morning.
I'll bet.
And they'll be busy all day and into the wee hours of the night.
Indeed. And you're wearing your green Bruins jersey.
Oh, they need all the luck they need. They need a lot of luck this year to get in the playoffs, and maybe your Maple Leafs might get past the first round if the Bruins aren't in it.
Oh, my gosh. Just like Cecil. You can't stop the digging, can you?
Yeah. Us Bruins fans got to stick together.
That's right. There you go. Shawn Cleary's here in studio as well. District 9, Halifax West Armdale. Shawn Cleary, are you a St. Patrick's Day guy? Do you care? Do you regale at all?
It's interesting. I think the more Irish you are, the less you actually care about it. It's a great holiday, but for me, it's actually my dad's birthday and my wife's birthday.
Wow. There you go. So it's a job for you today, basically.
It is a little bit.
Yeah.
And in Newfoundland, it's a national holiday over there. So,
is it?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Patron saint, baby.
There you go. Okay. David Hendsbee, by the way, District 2, Lawrencetown, the Lakes, the Chezzetcook, Eastern Shore. Has that name changed, the Lakes?
It added Lawrencetown and the Lakes. Used to have years ago, Lawrencetown was the name of when they changed districts around, and then lost to Preston Township into District 4. So they had to rename the district, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, it's Councillors on the Hot Seat, folks, on the St. Patrick's Day. That means give us a call if you'd like to chat with the councillors, one or both, with 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000, just like always. So, David, let's start with you. What's going on in your district?
Well, right now, with the spring thaw going on right now, a lot of concern about the state of the roads. A lot of the roads in my area are being covered by the province, but the soft, mushy gravel roads, people are looking for paving. The potholes are trying to get fixed. I'm glad to see the province is moving ahead on some major bridge replacements on number 7 highway, Muscat-Albert Harbor, and eventually Tangier. So having those bridges repaired by the province or replaced by the province is long overdue. And let's see how the spring goes.
Okay, Shawn, how about you? Anything cooking in your area?
Just getting things ready for the spring and summer. Park staff are out there doing lots of work in our parks, and I'm sure our folks who deal with potholes will be out there very soon too, because there's lots of those.
Yeah. Now, how many calls do you get or emails do you get concerning potholes, Shawn? Lots?
Not very many.
Yeah.
I think most of the people, because it's also important to remember that when you live on the peninsula, over half of the residents walk, cycle, and take transit to work. So as opposed to if you live in the suburban area, especially the rural areas where David is, and you're driving into town, you're going over a lot of roads and you're seeing a lot of potholes. Yeah. So I would imagine suburban rural councillors get a lot more phone calls than I do. I get a few.
Is that the case, David?
Yes, and a lot of the times, a lot of the potholes issues that I get are under provincial jurisdiction, so I just got to redirect the calls to the appropriate authorities. Okay.
I had Frank Palermo on the show on Friday. He's a former Dalhousie professor. Now runs an organization. It's a not for profit. It's I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it focuses on transit and light rail. And he's proposing that we invest heavily in light rail around the province, and in particular transit in general. Shawn, do you support that concept?
Yes. It's extremely expensive. Yeah. So let's put it in context. We're a province of only 1 million people, and light rail costs billions and billions of dollars. But if you think about what we're already doing, so light rail aside, because it's very sexy, we're working on our rapid transit plan. So if you think about some of our suburban communities, I'm thinking Sackville, Spryfield, those areas, if we have really great transit connections to them, and this is, I've talked to Frank about this, if you have really great transit connections to those places, they can grow up and be little towns in and of themselves, essentially satellites. And, Sackville could have its own downtown, it could have its own office space and retail, and then you wouldn't have to actually travel downtown very much. You could actually stay in your own community and work and play and do all those things. So I agree with Frank on a lot of those things. The only thing is for us to be involved in light rail, and I'm very happy the provincial government is studying this now. And if you look at places like Montreal, Calgary, where they run their light rail down their divided highways, so think the 102 coming in from Sackville-Bedford area. Yeah.
That makes sense.
We already have the real estate, just a matter of putting the concrete piers and elevating a rail line along there. That's possible to move many thousands of people. So the question is, are the feds and the province willing to put the money in? Because the taxpayers of HRM, we're already doing as much as we can. I mean, we're going into budget, as one of our reporters call it, playoffs for budget season this year, this week. And we're every year talking, nickels and dimes. How do we save this much money? And so there's no way we could do billions of dollars in light rail on our own.
Right. David, what's your thoughts on the concept of light rail?
The idea is great, but in reality, it's too expensive. We don't have the population base or the density to utilize it. I think that the versatility of having rapid bus services, dedicated more park and rides along 100 series highways are long overdue. We have more versatility with express buses than we do with a monorail or a commuter rail, because that's a fixed asset where buses can be moved to wherever the population base is. So I think there's more flexibility with the buses.
Okay, 902-405-6000, that's what it reaches. Again, 902-405-6000 if you'd like to chat with one or both of the councillors. When it comes to bus lanes, and there's concern from an organization called Friends of the Halifax Common. I'm sure you know these people. Sean, both of you, I'm sure you hear them. And they feel as though that expropriating land, in particular taking away housing, is not the right move at a time to build bus lanes. And they suggest that it's not effective anyway. Sean, what's your response to that?
Some of them are nice people. Some of them are bags of hammers. So when we look at and I get emails from people, it's like, you got to save the environment. And it's like, clearly you haven't read our climate action plan or our transportation plans, because this is exactly why we're doing this. So if you think about a place like Robie Street, and this is what we're talking about, and the impact on trees will be absolutely minimal, first of all. And the impact on buildings, there's only a handful of buildings, and the province is actually buying those buildings. And they will be building affordable housing, so far as from what they're telling us, on those sites, or arranging for other developers to build affordable housing on those sites. And so we're actually going to be, hopefully, at the end of the day, with more affordable housing than we're losing. The other thing is, we've added 100,000 people to HRM since I've been a councillor. I don't know. I mean, you've been around since before amalgamation, David. We've probably doubled in size since then.
Oh, yeah.
So when you think about the number of people that are here now, we have to move them more efficiently and more sustainably. Transit is the only way we're going to be able to do that. You can't just have more cars coming down the same streets. And so we can move. Think about one 40-foot bus gets 60 cars off the road. And so the more buses we have, and the only way you can get more buses is through dedicated transit lanes, and we need to fill those up with more and more buses. And so Robie Street, unfortunately, this is the thing. Yeah. As a growing city, you have to invest in your infrastructure. Yeah. We need those bus lanes.
Okay, how about interconnecting bus service to those? Because that's been a concern as well.
So those, if you think about it, Yonge and Bayers already have bus lanes, and they'll get better bus lanes. That'll connect. So if you think about, you're coming down from the Mumford Terminal, coming down the 102, coming down Joe Howe, you get onto bus lanes. Then you're on a bus lane at Bayers, you're on a bus lane on Yonge, you're on a bus lane all the way down Robie to Spring Garden Road, and then Spring Garden has loads of space already, so you can move people down there. And so when you think about the way we're doing this, that'll all be connected. And of course, we're talking about the Windsor Street Exchange. And so if you look at that rapid transit plan that I referred to earlier, and you look at the spines, and we have the purple route and the yellow route and the red route, and Robie is a key connector in all of that infrastructure, as well as the Windsor Street Exchange. And so it's kind of like the bike lanes. People say, well, there's no one riding in the bike lanes. They're not connected. Well, no, they're not yet. But when the network is finished, just like the bus network is finished, you will have a really well-connected network where people can travel at least as fast, maybe even faster than cars in some of those areas.
Okay, Herring Cove Road, how do you solve that challenge?
So that's similar to Robie. Most of Herring Cove Road, like if you're in Spryfield proper, you're 4 and 5 and 6 lanes in some areas. So it's the pinch points down around Sobeys where you're coming down into 3 lanes and then 2 lanes, and then you get the approach of the rotary, and then you back into 3 lanes again with a reversing middle. And so we've surveyed that area. We're looking at buying some slivers of property along there to widen that. We'll have dedicated bus lane. We'll have dedicated bike lanes. And where it's really too small as you approach the rotary, won't have bike lanes, but a multi-use path that'll come around the rotary. And so those are all things that are in our plans at the moment.
All right, so a bus lane on Herring Cove Road is something that's doable then?
Very much so.
Yeah. Okay. David, what about out your way and transit? Because we know that there's lots of concern about a lack of transit. And, of course, the ferries, which are often delayed because they don't have staffing.
Well, I've been advocating for the express rural services ever since they introduced the idea back in 2007. I only have the one express bus service now from Porter's Lake that comes up the Route 370 at 107 Highway. I need to have more park ride terminals at every interchange at Mineville at exit 18 at Mineville, exit 21. Now we have the new high school going in there at East Chezzetcook, and also in Muscat Albert Highway. I can have it at the rink. We need to have that rural express service on the 107 Highway. It was proposed over almost 2 decades ago, and then we need to fulfill that dream.
Okay, and what about the staffing on the ferries? I mean, I know this is up to the management at Halifax Transit, but it's something that's a massive concern for people.
Well, Transport Canada is making the staffing requirements make it more difficult. We have to have at least 4 seasoned pilots on those ships. So the question is, we just got to find them. And then how many people have been in sailing courses these days and ferrying boats around? It's a very dedicated workforce you got to find, and trying to find those pilots, it's difficult.
Well, if we're going to expand the ferry service, which is in the works, we need to solve that before we go up to Bedford, do we not?
Oh, I agree, and I think we should, in my opinion, we should have 2 ferries per terminal. Right now, we don't, so we need to have the capacity there.
Shawn, any way we can motivate people or motivate somebody or to get this fixed?
So as I understand it, the folks at Transit, when Dave Regie was running, and I haven't talked to Robin about this since he came in, but they had a plan and they were successfully recruiting people for those positions. It's kind of ironic. As you actually grow the service, it becomes easier to staff it because you'll have a lot more people and then you'll have more spares. And so the issue for us is there's literally no spares. So if someone calls in sick, then you don't have the crew that Transport Canada requires. You can't run the service. Right. And so that's been the delay and the cancellation in a number of the times and the routes for periods of time. And so my understanding is those people are coming on board right now. I don't think there's been very many cancellations recently. So knock on some wood, things are going well. But as we expand, it should actually become easier as you have more staff. The trick is, of course, recruiting those and making sure you have them in place. But we're still several years away from that expansion.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Alan, hello.
Yes, good morning for the councillors. And the question is for Councillor Cleary, but a fellow Boston fan there, Councillor Hendsbee, and I thought that was a class act on our boys' part there, Brad, putting in a full-page ad in the Boston paper, thanking the crew down there, thanking the Bostonians, and that was a real class act. So we can hold our heads high in that regard. So,
and also he did the promotional video there for Sackville Arena for the Hockeyville, and now Sackville's in top 4 now.
He did. So anyway, yes, he did. So kudos to the Marchand family. Councillor Cleary, just following up with the Windsor Street Exchange, the way I see it, and it's kind of hard with what we're seeing online and whatnot, but can you tell me one thing that I think that you're trying to make, the idea that they're going to try to make use of is the Kempt Road. It looks like Kempt Road is going to be a major thoroughfare for the buses, maybe coming in and linking up with Roby Street. Am I wrong in saying that? Because that would be a great thing. Am I wrong in saying that?
I would have to go back and look at the plan. I don't recall Kempt Road being a really integral part of that, but certainly things are going to change in the next number of years as Strawberry Hill gets redeveloped, and that's still many years away. But when you look at those areas around Windsor and Kempt, those are going to be critical for us to serve with transit. So I don't know if they're in the plan as an integral part right now, but they will become one as that area gets redeveloped.
Yeah, because, I mean, that would make a lot of sense to just, with Kempt Road, fire up Kempt Road, and then right where you folks, I know this is a major job, but right where you folks are sitting there now, that corner there, Young and where the gas station is and whatnot, that's a bad corner to begin with for traffic. But I mean, to just fire up Kempt Road and link up with Roby Street, as you're talking about, the plans are already set for that. I mean, that would make an awful lot of sense. But I mean, a lot of money involved, a lot of heartache, but that would be something that would really flush the traffic through and get right up onto Roby Street. So anyway, but I thought maybe you had a little bit more tight information on it. Second thing, just quickly, sir. The second thing. the land on the on Quinpool, where the old St. Pat's was. Usually, I understand. I think a developer has bought that or whatnot, but there'd be a sign on there, saying, future development or whatnot. Or it's been nothing happening there for years. Do you have any idea what's going on there with that major, very important plot of land?
So we did sell it to Bank Developments, and it was 3 or 4 years ago now, I think, at least 3 years ago. And so they are working on a plan. There was an iteration of a plan that was made public, I think unintentionally, by their architects about a year ago. And so I know they're working on a plan for that area, but I haven't heard from them, and I certainly haven't seen an application come into the city on what they're going to do there. But we would certainly love them to speed that up and get things going. Yeah. And with all of our municipal land that we sell, we put buyback clauses on there. So if they don't do it by a certain time period, then we may be looking at taking it back and putting it back on the market for someone who could do it faster.
Or it could be an alternative location for a new police station. So,
there you go. That's true too. But yeah, that's a good point, Councillor, to have that as a buy, because we got that prime land and we can't let that sit there for a long time. And but anyway, I appreciate your time, Councillors. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alan, thanks for the call, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. If you've got a question for one of the councillors or both, give us a call. 902-405-6000. Councillors on the Hot Seat continues when we come back. All right, here we go. Talking with our councillors, David Hendsbee, Shawn Cleary, 902-405-6000. Give us a call if you'd like to chat with one of the councillors. I'd love to hear from you. 902-405-6000. Gary, hello. Hi, Gary. Gary, are you there? I don't know if Gary's there or not. Put Gary on hold. We'll go back to him. John, hi.
Hey.
Hi, go ahead.
I'm a bus driver, and you're talking about rapid transit in the bus lanes, but there can be no rapid transit with the bus lanes because the bus lanes is just an extension of another lane for cars driving. There's no enforcement of the lanes at all, and during rush hour, the lanes are full of cars, so the buses cannot move clearly. So do you have any intentions on enforcing the bus lanes, or is it just going to be another extension of a lane?
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And in fact, as soon as the province passes and proclaims what they call the new Traffic Safety Act, which will replace the Motor Vehicle Act, they will finally give municipalities in Nova Scotia the ability to use electronic enforcement. So we can use photo radar, we can use red light cameras, we can put cameras in bus lanes, and we can ticket people. Right now, obviously, you can't have a police officer 24/7 in our bus lane. Actually, our bus lanes aren't enforced 24/7. They're Monday to Friday at the moment. And so when we look at that, once we get those cameras, that ability from the province, we're going to have them in all of those lanes. So enforcement will be something. And when I was in Toronto last, going up the 404 in the DVP, they have high occupancy vehicle lanes in the middle lane there, and they have cameras every so often. And if they don't, if the camera doesn't pick up, I think it's 3 people in the vehicle, then you get a ticket sent in the mail.
Great.
Okay.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. I've heard of people putting mannequins and dummies in their vehicle.
The AI now in those cameras can distinguish because they look for physical features of actual people.
Well, so the people actually did that, eh?
Oh, yeah. I remember in many places seeing dummies, mannequins, all kinds of things, stuffed shirts.
Wow.
Sounds like a Seinfeld episode.
Yeah, that's right. 902-405-6000. Gary, hello. Go ahead.
About the Halifax Transit, our service is getting very poor. Years ago, I take the bus every day, and now I find our service is getting very poor. And every time you turn around, it's out of service. Our buses, you go take the ferry boat, you want to catch a bus, the thing's gone. The bus just takes off, and that's our service. It needs to be better service and make it better. That's what you guys need to be doing.
Is that a question or a statement?
Statement.
Okay, thanks, Gary. David, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, having connecting bus routes and stuff is important, and people want to get from one bus to another, and hopefully the connections are on time or don't leave too early or get there too late. And also with the ferry connections, you always want to run to catch the bus or run to catch the ferry. So he's got an important point there, and hopefully as our new technology advances, they could be more on time and more connectivity.
Yeah, Sean, it is tough. I mean, in fairness, it's not an easy thing to, and I'm not being an apologist for transit, but it is a tough job, right? Let's face it.
There's a lot of moving parts. So when you think about making those connections so that you have one route lining up with other routes coming to those stops at the same times, especially around our major terminal areas, it's tough. But I can't argue with Gary. If you look at things like our on-time performance, if you look at the number of overloads, if you look at the length of time it's taking the bus to make its way around, all of those metrics have been going down the last couple of years. And so some of that is outside of the control of transit, like road construction, other things, but a lot of it is within their control. And hopefully now we're getting a handle on some of these things. But we need to make it better. We can't, if it's not fast, if it's not frequent, if it's not reliable, then people aren't going to take it.
That's right. Simple as that. 902-405-6000. Hello, Chris.
Good morning, gentlemen. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Indeed.
And speaking of St. Patrick's Day, councillors, does HRM have anything planned to celebrate our great Irish heritage?
David, you're kind of the professor emeritus when it comes to that, are you not?
Well, it's a good question. We used to have the St. Patrick's Day parade put on by the parish, but that's been canceled this year.
It was canceled? How come?
Lack of volunteers. Lack of volunteers.
Really?
Yeah.
I do know that we had the St. Patrick's Day flag raising, did we not?
Yes, we did, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, it's too bad we couldn't have done more, but if there's no volunteers, I guess there's no volunteers. How goes the budget deliberations, gentlemen?
It's still going. We're back at the grind again on Wednesday. And I always told you can come on down and give us your 5 minutes of your comments on the budget anytime.
Oh, David, if all I'm going to get is 5 minutes, there's no point in coming down. I could talk to you for an hour and not get anywhere with you, really. I don't think you'd pay attention to me.
Well, Chris, you have an opportunity to make your public comments either in person or in writing or over online. So
can I have more than 5 minutes?
We have 5 minutes to everybody, but if you want to put a long dissertation on paper, we'll certainly read it.
Okay. Is there anything that you guys have cut or reduced as far as expenditures are concerned?
Well, nothing is cut or reduced or added just yet because we haven't finalized it, but there's been lots of proposals to add things and lots of proposals to cut things.
Okay. Can you give me an example on, have either of you gentlemen personally made recommendations to cut or reduce any expenditures?
Yes.
And if so, what programs?
Police.
What have you?
Millions of dollars.
Anything
in fact,
else?
I tried to save the taxpayers $12 million, but council wouldn't go for it.
Well, you could cut bike lanes. That would save it.
That would save, a couple $100,000 here and there.
Well, I guess we're not going to dance this dance. It's not working out. You're not going to cut bike lanes. So
but why would we? That actually just adds expenses to the municipality.
But Chris, also,
how so?
you wait till the advent of these scooters coming on board. You're only seeing the tip of the iceberg right now. And those bike lanes are going to be inundated with scooters. You're going to have the cyclists going to complain about the scooters that are going to be in them. So we're having
I guess you'll have to do something about the scooters.
Well, no, we got a bylaw being proposed right now coming forward in regards to how to regulate and monitor where they go, how they go, and where they can be placed. So hopefully we'll have.
So the only thing that you've talked about reducing is the police budget. Is there anything else?
Well, that's the one of the motions I put forward. The mayor said he wanted to cut 170 new staff members. I think he also wanted to cut the climate action tax. He wanted to
cut that by a third. Yeah,
I'm trying to remember now all the things that he proposed to cut.
Take $10 million out of the library reserve.
So basically, what you're saying is the mayor has proposed a lot of reductions and cuts. But
well, he proposed I told you I tried to save $12 million. And if you look at the proposals, they're vague, and he basically said to the CIO, "Here's some ideas. See what you can do with them." So we'll find that out on Wednesday.
Okay.
But if you have specific cuts, Chris, I'd love to see them. Besides bike lanes, of course.
there's a lot of things I think could probably be cut if you really scrutinize.
Give me
that
three
budget,
things.
But
Hey, Chris, I'm going to put you on hold because we're up against a break and I want to give you ample time. I know that you mentioned 5 minutes, so I don't want to rush you. Okay, hang there. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with their councillors when we come back. All right, continuing with our councillors on the hot seat, David Hendsbee, Shawn Cleary in studio. We got some room for you, so I'll give us a call if you'd like to chat with one of the councillors. If you want to put the councillors on the hot seat, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. Chris, we wanted to give you more than 5 minutes, so here you are again. So let's do a bit of a reset then. Your question for whom is what?
Well, basically, what, if any, is going to be cut or reduced in the budget? And personally, what did the two councillors you have on there today recommend get cut?
Okay, so let's revisit it. Shawn Cleary, you voted to save $10 million.
$12 million just on the cameras.
On body cameras by police.
And I also put a motion forward to not hire 8 new civilian HRP,
right?
Which would have saved, I'm trying to remember now the exact number. I think in a full year it would have been $1 million something.
Okay. And David, you supported the body cameras, is that correct?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay. And
David, did you... Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead, Chris. It's your turn. Go ahead.
David, did you recommend personally anything be cut or reduced in the budget?
No, not at the present time. We're still in the budget process.
No, but have you seen anything?
No, I have not put personally anything myself directly forward, no.
Okay. How about your other councillors? Is there much talk of any reductions at all amongst them, do you think? Or
there is for some of them, yep.
Yeah, okay. What about new expenditures or programs? How does that stand? Is there anything new in the budget that was never there before, or new expenditures that you're promoting?
Sure. There's new, as we talked about, new expenditures for HRP, new expenditures for RCMP, new expenditures for Youth Advocate Program, new expenditures for 170 new positions in various departments.
No, that isn't what I meant. Perhaps to clarify, not increases to existing programs, but any new programs or new expenditures.
Well, we're still dealing with the homeless situation, and those are expenses we should not be having at all. That should be all provincial jurisdiction, but we're being drawn into it anyway, and hopefully with federal and provincial resources, we can keep our costs to a minimal.
Yeah. How is it sitting this year as far as a tax increase? What kind of a look are we staring at?
Well, it depends on where it ends up on Wednesday or Friday, but if the mayor gets his way and freezes rates, you're probably looking at a 5 to 6% tax bill increase.
Yeah, that'll be the net monetary increase, even though they freeze the rates.
Yeah, with assessments going up, unless you drop the rate, as we've done 7 of the 8 years I've been a councillor, then you end up with a higher bill automatically.
Okay, so the mayor wants to freeze rates, thereby giving us a 5 to 5% net increase in the amount of taxes we pay. Are you in favor of that, or do you want to lower it from there?
Oh, I'd like to get it 0, but the question is not that. It's what we spend our money on, and so you work your way backwards. You say, what do the citizens of Halifax need? How much is that going to cost? And then you look at what the tax rate's going to be.
Right. But what about what the citizens of Halifax want?
Well, so Chris, you want something different than the emails and phone calls I get every day from my residents. So there is no one view.
I know there's no one view, but with all due respect, guys, the majority of people in HRM, if you put it to a plebiscite or a referendum, the majority of people do not want all this money spent on bike lanes.
Actually, that's not correct. If you look, no, that's not correct, Chris. We actually did a survey, a resident survey of all of these issues, and you're factually incorrect. The majority of Nova Scotia, or the majority of HRM residents, did not want us to not spend money on bike lanes.
Really? I'd like to see that study.
It's on our website, halifax.ca.
Under the citizens survey, yeah.
And the citizens. When was this survey done?
In the fall.
Yeah, and it just got released 2 or 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 meetings ago. We had a review on it at council.
How were people made aware that there was even a survey? I've never heard of a survey being done.
It goes out.
I certainly would have participated.
It's a statistical process. So what they do is they randomly select residents, and then they send out to thousands of residents a survey, and then they get those comments back either electronically or over the phone. And so if you didn't receive one, just because you weren't randomly selected.
But there's also an opportunity for the general public to participate.
Yeah, there's also an available
There was a portal available for people to go online, or they could call in and get a hard copy sent to them. So people had that opportunity, but the problem is that information was more of additional information because they didn't have any clarification of how they could determine where it came from.
Well, you can't analyze it statistically.
Okay, so if the mayor is not successful in what he wants to do with freezing the rate, what kind of a potential tax increase are we looking at?
Well, if everything that's on the list went in, you're probably looking at about 8%, I think.
8%. Are either of you in favor of allowing this thing to go to 8%?
No, of course not.
No.
Good. Okay. One more quick question, if I could. You mentioned red light cameras and this sort of thing once the Motor Vehicle Act is changed. Any idea what equipping HRM with that kind of stuff is going to cost? Any idea at all?
So the cost keeps going down, but we're looking at probably $80,000 to $100,000 per intersection. So that would be, I think, 4 cameras. And then, so if you did them,
but in total?
Well, it depends on how many you deploy.
Oh, okay. Well, so are you thinking to deploy them only at the very, very major intersections like Willow Tree, stuff like that, or?
Well, it'd be evidence-based. So what you do is you'd look at the collision rates at each of those intersections. You could look at the incidents, say, for vehicle-pedestrian collisions. So there's a number of things you could look at. But, I would like to deploy them in many, many, many places.
But that would cost a huge amount of money, would it not?
Well, it's cheaper than a police officer.
Okay. Yeah, I know. But would you propose that I would be in favor of it? I'm not going against it, but I'd be in favor of it only under one condition, that it be paid for by the money from fines generated by the system itself. Because if the system can't pay for itself, I wouldn't be an advocate to have it put in there.
So if you look at Ontario's example, or if you look at Alberta's example, they collect in the cities where they've deployed them, they collect about the same amount of revenue or more than it costs to deploy them.
And do you know if in those
But here's
cities...
the thing, though. We don't get the same split of those revenues from those tickets. So the province actually takes the majority of that funding from those tickets, so we only get a fraction of that.
So do you think that there's any possibility that your share, or the city's share, would be able to pay for this system?
That's a good question.
Probably, but I won't know until we actually see the analysis.
Okay, Chris, going to move on. Sorry, pal.
Todd, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Take care. 902-405-6000. Melinda, hello.
Hi, I just got a question for David. Just wondering when, or even if he knows when the C&D is up for vote again on the council.
Still waiting for that. I'm still waiting for that comment to come forward to council. And as you know, Councillor Purdy and I have been excluded by the judge to participate in that dialogue. So I'm still waiting for that report to come to council. And when it does, I'll be sitting on the sidelines, very frustrated by the judge's decision. I still believe the province can help us out here. I've been advocating for years now. The province can expropriate the property and take some property from us at an industrial park up by the airport and exchange the land.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for too, but we'll see what happens. And my other question is, what's happening with the playground? That was the sketch was done, the plan was done there by the Lake Echo Community Center.
It's going to the next phase. We went from concept phase, now they're going to the detail engineering drawing. So that's the next phase going on right now.
Okay, perfect. Let it go. And that's a go, right?
Oh, well, it's still in the budget plans for the next year or the year following, but right now they're going from concept to design work now.
Okay, that's my two questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Mark, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. Happy St. Paddy's Day to everybody. I am going to take issue respectfully with the issues of body cams. I will keep this succinct. I can't get into details. I currently have a complaint with the complaints commissioner, the police review board. There'll be a public hearing at some point. I'm not going to speak to it until it happens, but I do have in front of me from the 2023 annual report. Since Sean's a big fan of numbers, so am I. 2023, 169 complaints. Okay. Substantiated 1. So, I mean, look, body cams are going to protect the police as well as the public. But can anyone tell me that this is a fair system when out of 169 complaints, 1 was substantiated? And I'll leave the phone and let you guys discuss that. Thank you. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Sean, interesting comment.
So this is an interesting one because it's not something that is within the control of council. Police complaints come under the Police Act, which is provincial. And so I can't say he's wrong or he's right. I have heard many people make the same argument. And when you have police, because the first step is police investigating police internally, and then it goes to, if you do it through the public complaints process, a lot of those folks are ex-police or seconded police. And so I have heard that argument that it's just policing police. So how you deal with that, I'm not sure.
Okay. David, any comment on that?
No.
Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. That's what it reaches for Councillors on the hot seat. Again, 902-405-6000. Hello, Jim.
Hey, good morning, Todd, and good morning, councillors. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
I wanted to ask about the Bloomfield School site on Agricola and in the North End. I live in the North End. I've been looking at that eyesore for many years and wondering where it all stands and reading a little bit about it. It sounds like it's been a frustrating time for the city trying to deal with that developer to clean that up. I think I've read about fire inspection enforcements, but can you give me an overview of what you know about what's going to happen now that fire has happened?
Well, my understanding, the site's being cleared up by the property owner, and if it's not done in a reasonable amount of time, an order can be done for cleaning up the rest of it. In regards to development of the site, that's a question that was being investigated now. Should we look at a buyback option on the property? Should we exercise that or not? And if there's enough land there, perhaps it could be an alternative location for a police station. So I'm just looking at different options.
Yeah, what got me thinking about this was when you mentioned earlier around the Quinpool Road, St. Pat's site, and the buyback system that you have with developers. Do you know when the buyback option kicks in with this particular developer?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that Councillor Inch has asked for that to report.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, just one vote for cleaning it up. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with our councillors when we come back. All right, we've got our councillors. Shawn Cleary's here in studio. David Hendsbee had to step out. He has an important meeting to go to, but he tells me that he's available via phone. So, Vanessa, if you want to get an opportunity, give him a buzz and get him on the line. He's probably in the elevator right now. But anyway, nonetheless, 902-405-6000. Robert, hello. Hi, Robert.
Yes, I'm calling about the budget. Do you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, pal. Are you there? You sound like your phone's got playing games with you.
Oh, how is it now?
It's better. Go ahead.
Okay. The climate change part of the budget, the 3%, it was mentioned that Andy Fillmore might be considering cutting that part along with other parts of the budget by about a third. And the reason I'm calling is I think there are a lot of other 3% parts of the budget that could and should be cut well before climate change. Overall, long-term, worldwide, it's the most important issue we've got because of the destruction of mankind and most plants and animals on Earth if enough isn't done quick enough, soon enough. So I think at 3%, it's a bargain. If it were 20%, I'd be willing to pay it for the climate change. As you know, it's called Halifax. If you Google it, there's 35 pages that describe 6 or 7 parts to it. The most important part being the Leeds type changes to try to convert all buildings, commercial and residential, and all houses to heat pumps and other aspects of the Leeds building, such as the insulation and so on. The second biggest part of the change in greenhouse gases is, of course, transportation. And those 35 pages with 300 references describe in each of those categories how much the original cost will be, but how much money will be brought back in, saved eventually. It also indicates for each one how many jobs might be lost, but long term how many jobs will be gained. And of course the greenhouse gases saved. And so it's a model. Halifax is a model, and many other cities are coming in to follow it. It's excellent. And there's one caveat. Andy Fillmore is known to be in favor of climate change mitigation, and so it may just be the fact that Halifax is ahead on its budget, is managing to do its things with less money than expected. Only in that case should it be cut. Otherwise, that 3% should certainly be maintained, not cut by a third or any other amount. And there are 30 other 3% parts of the budget that could be cut ahead of this bargain we have for climate change to protect us from world catastrophe with just 3% of the budget. And one final thing with these, what do you call it, from the states, that may make the cost of some of the things go up. So don't cut that budget. You may need a little bit more because of those Trump's.
I think tariffs is the word you're looking for. Tariffs, yes.
Tariffs, yes. So please don't cut that just 3% to save us from climate change.
Okay, Robert.
An excellent program.
Okay, thank you so much, Sean. You agree with that? Obviously, I shouldn't say obviously.
I 100% agree with Robert. So when you think about that climate action plan. Oh, there we go. Yeah, when you think about that climate action plan, to Robert's point, actually, we're not ahead. We're still behind when you look at community emissions and others. But that puts at risk our ability to do deep retrofits to our buildings. It puts at risk our electrification of our fleet. It puts at risk the money we're putting into infrastructure to harden it from climate change. And so that it actually is a huge part of what we're doing. And I certainly can't support cutting that. There are many, many, many other things that Robert mentioned that we could cut and we should cut if we're looking to decrease the increase in tax bills. But the climate action plan is absolutely the wrong area to be cutting at this point in time.
Okay. David, you're on the line. You agree with that or disagree with that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think reducing it a bit will give us some savings in the short term, but in the long run, we have to look at we'll probably be prolonging the program as well. The Halifax will be for a finite period of time, so this marginal cut will probably extend the life of the program longer.
Okay, 902-405-6000. Gordon, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Well, you?
Good, thanks. Todd, I wanted to ask Sean.
Sure.
If there's any plans for that intersection at Quinpool and Roby where the Atlantica Hotel is to, change that in the future, because, it's pretty much the worst intersection in the city. And I was hoping that maybe, I'm being nosy, so I was wondering if maybe he could inform me if there's anything that's going to happen there in the future.
So Quinpool and Roby, when you say the worst, do you mean for congestion, for collisions, for
everything? I walk it, I drive it, I see it every day. The traffic is horrible, the light system's horrible. There's so much traffic there. And I was thinking, are they going to put a rotary there? Are they going to make another lane?
Don't say rotary. David will say that later. So I'll tell you, in the short term, there won't be anything happening there because the provincial government's hospital redevelopment plan, I believe I heard it's going to be ramping up till 2027, 28. And then I think the hospital finishes around 2030 or 2031, but mostly I think it's internal after that. So for the next 2 or 3 years, we won't be able to really do any work on that intersection because the hospital project is being pushed out into a lot of that roadway. Having said that, though, if David's still on the line, I'll let him address the roundabout that he's been pushing for forever there.
Okay, David.
If I can say so. Go ahead.
A roundabout would be perfect there.
I totally agree, and I think that you could use some of the maybe a lane off the commons there, but more so you could even temporarily put a lane through there while you're doing the construction, with a promise to the public that you're going to restore it back twice as nice as it already is. And I'm still trying to figure out why, when they're building that new seniors complex there, why they didn't leave enough room there for another lane going around from Roby to Quimpo. I mean, they built it right over, almost in the middle. They pulled it right to the edge of the road when they could have left enough room there to make another lane. And I don't know. I just think I agree with you. I think a rotary would go really nice there. With the exception, you're probably going to have to steal a little bit of the corner of the commons there. But I mean, I don't think many people would complain about that, considering the improvement that it would make.
I agree with you totally.
Okay, Gordon.
All right.
Thanks for the call, pal. All right.
Thanks, bye.
All right. Take care. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We don't have room for anybody else. David Hendsbee, thanks for doing it. We appreciate it.
No problem. And I'm here at the Bridge Commission.
All right. Take care. Take care. And Shawn Cleary, thanks so much, my friend. Appreciate
Thanks,
it as
Todd.
always. All right. That is Shawn Cleary and David Hendsbee. That is Councillors on the Hot Seat. Thanks for the calls, everybody. If you didn't get on and you want to keep talking, we are the place for you. 902-405-6000. We get an open hour when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls on this St. Patrick's Day Monday. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz again, 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? How about the fact that there are no tolls? That's right, folks. No tolls on the harbor bridges for the first time in, I think it's 70 years. I think that's what we were reporting. That's pretty cool. I wasn't sure what to do with my MacPass. I didn't know if they should be recycled because there's an electronic chip in them and they're plastic. So I still haven't discarded mine yet. If somebody has some insight, let me know. What should I do with my MacPass? What have you done with your MacPass? Because I'm sure that most of them will just get chucked in the garbage, but there may be something that we should be doing with them. Other than that, I don't know. Regardless, what are your thoughts on the bridges and the future of the bridges? Because that was about $35 million, which was collected through tolls that will no longer be collected. That means that the maintenance of the bridges will be spread amongst all taxpayers around the entire province. Do you agree with that? I personally agree with it. I think when it comes to infrastructure, that is the nature of how it is. There's large infrastructure throughout the province of Nova Scotia, rather, that I pay for through my taxes that I never use. And I'll use 4-plaid ice rinks, for example. We've got a couple of them, at least here in HRM. I think there's 2. Imagine the cost that it would be to run, operate, and to build those things and to maintain them. Huge cost. So that people can go in and play hockey of all ages and skate, whatever skating venues and pools and all that stuff. Recreation. Huge costs associated with all of it that I would say the vast majority of Haligonians don't use or Nova Scotians don't use. But we all pay for it. And that is what taxation is all about. So I think that it's good that the bridges are no longer being tolled. And I'm not sure what it'll do to traffic patterns, but what are your thoughts on it? Are you pleased with the removal of the tolls, or do you have concerns? We know that the McKay Bridge has a lifespan, which I think it's 2 or 3 decades out, in which it'll need to be replaced, and no real word on or what sense of urgency that is required to deal with something like that, but you got to plan those things out at least 10 years, I would think. So what are your thoughts on that? 902-405-6000. We've got a new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, of course. Sworn in on Friday along with his cabinet, a downsized cabinet of 23 people. From Trudeau's cabinet, over 30. Carney talking about this group as though that it's a new cabinet with new ideas and new motivation. Do you agree with that? Or is it just kind of more of the same people? Because that's what it is. It's 23 of the same people that were in the previous cabinet. I think for the most part, there might be a couple of new people. So what are your thoughts on Mark Carney and his future as Prime Minister? How long do you think there'll be an election call? And do you think that Mark Carney could call for an election immediately? Does he have a mandate right now? And I would suggest probably not. And does that matter that he doesn't have a mandate? He's going to Europe today. He's on his way to Europe. He's already there, I believe. And, of course, he is going to do his best to get support in Europe. Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived in Paris today to meet with French President Emmanuel Macron. He's there looking for support from one of Canada's oldest allies as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to attack Canada's sovereignty and economy. Speaking to the media before heading into their meeting, Carney referred to Canada as being the most European of non-European countries. It's Carney's first official trip since being sworn in as Prime Minister on Friday. And, of course, Mark Carney is being accused by Conservatives in Canada of signing a fake document to lift the carbon tax. The signing ceremony happened when Carney allowed media in to witness the end of the inaugural cabinet meeting. However, Prime Minister Stephen Harper's chief of staff posted on X that the document has no legal effect. Meantime, an X post by Conservative MP Michelle Rempel-Garner says the carbon tax still exists, accusing Carney of trying to copy U.S. President Trump in his daily executive signings. There you go. So the fear-mongering has officially begun, trying to suggest that Mark Carney is going to be using the equivalent of executive orders. Of course, there's lots of fear-mongering going on the other way, as the attacks against Pierre Poilievre are exactly that. He's like Trump. That is basically going to be the Liberals' argument against Pierre Poilievre, saying he's Trump North. And they use his own words against him in those attack ads, which have effect, for sure. They'll affect a lot of people, but not everybody, certainly. So how ugly do you think this election campaign will get? How soon should an election be called? Are you looking for an election right away? Does Carney need to call one immediately? And do you think that the polls and the huge swing in the polls are here to stay, or is this a bit of an anomaly, a bit of a bounce that governments generally get, or parties generally get when they have a leadership race? 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. Let's kick it off with Rick. Hi, Rick.
Good morning. Look, never before in Canadian history have we had a prime minister that didn't have a seat in the House of Commons.
That's not true. John Turner had one and did not have a seat in the House of Commons. I made that error as well a few weeks ago, so I know that.
Sure?
Yes, I'm sure. I was correct. I was corrected by Steve Murphy, so I'm quite certain that.
I'm not sure, but regardless,
John Turner did not have a seat. Rick, John Turner did not have a seat. That is a fact.
Okay, fine.
Well, I'm not.
Second time in Canadian history.
There you go.
So, regardless of the history, he can't speak in the House of Commons.
That's true.
So, anyway, I guess my main point, and I won't belabor it, is we need to have an election. If he's so great, let's put him to the test and see if the Canadian people think he's great.
Yeah, I think you'll. I think you'll see an election pretty soon. That's what I think.
Well, I hope so. I've also seen some reports that they're going to try to hang on till October. Blah blah blah. I don't know, but I just I'm kind of getting tired of this. This I don't know what to call it, a game or whatever. It's not in the best interest of Canada, in my view. It's certainly not in the best interest of Canada for him to be over talking, in France, being, as you say, Justin Trudeau. The first thing he does is to get hop on a plane and go to France. So anyway, that's my take on that, and I'd like to see the results. I'd like to see the Liberals, put in the penalty box for at least 4 years, like the Conservatives have been since Stephen Harper, but only for longer. Yeah. So that's the way the system works. It has to be a pendulum that slides back and forth.
Yeah. Rick, I think you'll see an election by the end of this month. You'll see an election call. I would dare say that's my prediction.
I wouldn't bet against you.
Yeah.
But I'm hoping you're right.
Okay, pal. Okay. Thanks, Rick. Take care, bud. 902-405-6000. Hi, Eric. How are you, pal?
Hey, how are you doing today, Todd?
I'm well, you?
Happy St. Patty's Day to all of you.
Yeah.
I was wanted to talk to the councillors, but I never got a chance to. I got one big beef, and I've been sitting on it for 48 hours. I couldn't wait to get on the air today. Bus shelters. when and if are they going to do anything about stopping vandalism? I was talking to a couple of bus drivers, and they told me patrols could happen between the hours of 10 and 1. That's when the vandalism starts. We have up here in Clayton Park $15,000 worth of damage and counting. And I'm just wondering if and when are they going to start doing something. They want us to travel a bus, but they don't want us to. They want us to stand out in the rain, the snow, the hail, and everything else. I mean, I was hoping to talk to the councillors. Maybe you can pass it on to somebody down there, see what they're going to do. And secondly, they say they have something to do with land development. Well, we have up here on Washmill Lake Drive, we have a driving range. Now, I went up there one day and I talked to the owners, and I said, "What's this about you guys moving on?" Well, we got an offer from the developers that we couldn't refuse. Well, if the city has anything to say about land development, why can't the city make an offer to this gentleman or this company that has the driving range? Because every time you go up there, the owner says, "Well, you can go to Brightwood." Well, I don't want to go to Brightwood. I have a driving range in my own backyard. You know, and from April to October, give and take with weather conditions, I've talked to people and they say the same thing. Why do we have to go to Brightwood when we have that sitting in our own backyard? I don't know how you feel about all this, because obviously you don't stand in the shelter, and obviously I don't know if you go to the driving range, but these are questions that need answering. I mean, I know I don't have 5 minutes like Chris and all them guys, but that's my point. I'm just so frustrated, Todd. The Irish is coming on to me. I'm an Irishman, true and for, my last name is O'Rourke, and if that ain't Irish, well then I don't know what is. But what do you think about all the things I had to say in the last couple of minutes?
Well, I don't really have anything to add because, like you said, I don't use the golf course. I don't use the driving range there, although I have before, but I don't now, and I don't ride the bus, so I can't really add much to it. Sorry I didn't get you on during the councillors. I apologize, pal.
Well, that's okay. I'm going to phone my councillor and see if he or she is going to do anything, and if not, I'm going to start a petition, because I talked to a lot of people up here, and this area is an accident waiting to happen. I mean, they don't want to do anything for Fairview Clayton Park. I mean, they're looking at doing other parts of the city. They ignored Fairview Clayton Park, and I don't think that's fair. I'm going to talk to my councillor, and if I don't get any satisfaction, I'm going to organize a little bunch of people, and we're going to go down there with our issues and let the chips fall where they may.
Okay, Eric, thanks for the call, buddy. Take care. 902-405-6000. Give us a call, folks. Good open lines for you on this Monday. What would you like to get into? 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls. We got an open hour. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. The tolls are gone on the bridges. And one of the questions that I threw out there this morning is what do you do with those plastic Mac passes? Do we throw them out? And I got an email from somebody who says the bridge wants them back if possible. It says, I'm keeping mine for the electronics. Our radio, I'll take any other if people want to toss them out. Great hacking tech for credit card signals. So anyway, yeah, just a question. I wasn't sure. Like I said, I just had this clunky Mac pass. I don't know what to do with it now, and I'm curious if there's some direction what to do with them. So if other people know, let us know. 902-405-6000. Regarding the tolls themselves, I was pleased and am pleased that they're gone. I recognize that there are $35 million in revenue at least that won't be collected now, and look, that money's got to come from somewhere, and it'll come from the rest of the taxpayers. And I made the comment that I think that that's okay. Because there's plenty of infrastructure around the province that I don't use, and in the municipality that I don't use, that my taxpayer money goes towards. And Stephen says, I agree. I have no issues with the tolls being removed. It is no different from when government of the day removed the tolls on the Canso Causeway and the Cobequid Pass. People use the same excuses as now. I don't use it. How's it going to be funded? And so on. It's a service provided for all Nova Scotia if you choose it to use it or not. That comes from Stephen. So there you go. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 6000. Rick, you wanted to clarify something that you brought up, or?
Yeah, that was simply. I know that he wasn't. John Turner was not, as you said, a member of Parliament at the time he was elected leader, but he was first elected in 1962, and then he served for Pierre Trudeau as Minister of Justice and the Attorney General from 1968 to 72, and Minister of Finance from 1972 to 1975. So I think that puts him in a completely different category than Mark Carney, who's never been elected to anything.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Todd. I just want to talk about the Mark Carney thing. And I'd like to add there to Rick's thing about John Turner. I think he'd roll over in his grave with Steve Murphy and other people comparing the two to one another. John Turner had quite successful political career in doing what he did. And honestly, when he did end up winning the leadership race, he took it on the chin and went to an election and lost. So, I mean, Mark Carney is not like that at all. Mark Carney's actually 100% Justin Trudeau, and he's just showed that from now until Friday blatantly. I mean, he put on an absolute theater show with that signing of the document. I mean, if that's not the most embarrassing thing that I've seen someone do in an act of trying to be something, I don't know what to call it, and then jumps on a plane and flies to Europe and talks about how Europe's one of our biggest trade and we need to talk. We're 4%. We trade with Europe. Over 80% is done in the U.S. He should be here dealing with that problem, if anything. And as far as, again, with Steve Murphy, he said we'll be able to tell big time how different Carney is from Trudeau with his cabinet. I mean, he's got over 90% of the exact same people moved around in the cabinet. Mm-hmm. So in order for Carney, I don't know how you feel about this, Todd, but I don't recognize Mark Carney as my prime minister. And that's not because I don't trust him, I don't like him. That's because nobody voted for him. I reckon just much as I dislike Trudeau, I still had to vote against him and I lost, so I recognized him as my prime minister, if that makes sense. I keep hearing the word mandate. I've heard it through the media a few times that, he's got a mandate. And I'm having a hard time understanding that because the media went so ballistic and praised so much that the Liberal Party has 400,000 new registered voters. And it was a big thing. They were so happy. Look at Mark Carney, what he's doing to the party. And not even half of them turned out to vote. And 130,000 of them voted for him. So there's 27 million registered voters in Canada. And we're basing this guy as a prime minister of 130,000 votes. In Pierre Poilievre's election, I believe there was 600,000 registered Conservatives. And Pierre Poilievre actually got 295,000 of those votes. So if a mandate is a leadership race, I think Pierre Poilievre outplays him by, over double. So I don't know why he can't call an election. And I find that's very troubling because he keeps going on about financial crisis and we're in a crisis now. And that just opens up the door to what people call me a conspiracy because he could claim a financial crisis, an emergency act, and we don't have a vote. We don't ever go to vote. We don't know when we're voting. So I don't know, Todd. What do you think? Do you think we're going to have a vote?
Yes, I do. I think there'll be an election called by the end of the month. I think Carney's doing a bit of a victory lap right now, going to Europe, kind of sucking in the ambiance of being the guy. And I listen. I would like to see him go take on Donald Trump for sure. I agree with that 100%. But quite honestly, I don't think Donald Trump will give him the time of day. And you can read into that whatever you will. I don't think.
And I think that has to do with because when he said he asked Trudeau when the vote was in Canada, and he said Justin Trudeau never gave me an answer to that.
Sure.
And I think that opens the door because he knows that there's no election planned and he's not going to take Carney serious.
Well, I listen, Sean, I would say that I believe that Carney's going to call an election. What do I base that on? Probably not much more than you're basing on that he won't. But my feeling is that we will have an election by the end of this month. There'll be an election call, and by the end of April, we will have a government, and we shall see. As far as him being sneaky or any of that, I think that they're following the rules. He ran in a leadership bid. The rule is that the leader of the governing party with the most seats inherits the prime ministerial job. Perhaps that's a loophole in our charter. Perhaps we should make it be mandatory that whoever is the prime minister needs to have a seat in the House of Commons. I think that's a legitimate question. But
Canada doesn't pick their prime minister like we as Canadians.
That's right.
We don't even pick our own prime minister.
Exactly.
Elite party.
Yep.
An elite party picks the person that we. So yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah. So we shall see, Sean. Look, I get it. I hear you. Listen, I'll tell you this, John. I'll tell you this right now. If in fact they roll out some emergency measures or whatever and hold on to power and try to cling to power and not get an election by the end of this month, I'll be with you on the top shelf yelling and screaming about it. Believe me.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
All right. Well,
okay, pal. All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Yeah, he's got to call an election. If he tries to pull off this, well, we can't call an election because they're troubled times. I will be but I think they'll want an election because they're riding high in the polls right now. Why would you want to mess with that? I think they'll call an election and soon. It's my instinct, whatever that's worth. What's your take on any of this or anything else you got on your mind? We get some open lines for you folks. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for the open hour. Again, 902-405-6000. I was asking about Mac Pass, the plastic Mac Pass, what we can do with them. And on the Halifax Harbour Bridges website, it says that if you have a hard shell Mac Pass, place it in your blue bag recycling. It's considered e-waste. So do not toss them in the garbage. Put them in a blue bag recycling, and it is considered e-waste. If you remove the sticker from the windshield, just throw that one in the garbage. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. A quick email from Ken, then back to the phones. I was saying that as far as the loss of revenue from the Mac Pass and from the tolls, the $35 million, that'll be shared now amongst the province, and I said that I think that's not a bad thing. Ken says the big difference between HRM bridges and HRM hockey rinks is users of hockey rinks still have to pay to use the rink, ice rental fees, despite being paid for by the taxpayer. While the bridge, it is also funded by the taxpayer, but they have dropped the usage fee, unlike hockey rinks. So by your logic, hockey rinks should drop the fees to use the rink to keep in line with bridges. And that's fair enough. So perhaps that's not as good a description. But there is lots of infrastructure, highway infrastructure I'll use with not bridges to nearly the same size as the McKay or McDonald, but some pretty large spans of bridges in the province in which I never ever use, and in many cases to very rare, rural, remote areas. Yet we all share the burden of paying for that. So that to me would be a better example. Still applicable, but I get your point with the user fee and rinks. Because that is an apples and apples comparison. Fair enough. I accept that. Thanks, Ken. 902-405-6000. Hello, Ed.
Hey, Todd. How you doing today?
I'm well. You?
Oh, I'm doing okay.
Great.
Thought I'd pitch in here on the Mark Carney conversation.
Sure.
8 weeks ago, my friend, I was voting for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. If you look at the polls and the big change, that we're almost basically tied. Liberals actually ahead in some of those polls. I am one of those people. If an election were held today, there's no way I would not vote for Mark Carney.
Okay, tell me why.
We are at a point here, Todd, where the country of Canada is at a quintessential moment of time of threat from the United States. Our existence and our economy in the next few years are at stake. And there's no way I'm not voting for Mark Carney, an economic genius, to go up against Donald Trump over anybody else. And I think that's why you're seeing in the polls, if you look at the NDP and the Green, they are collapsing. It is all going red. Actually, I was looking at some polls there today. I seen in the Leger poll, the Abacus poll, Main Street poll, Liberals either down a couple, tied, or up by a few. But the interesting thing is, up in Atlantic Canada, up in Quebec, and there seems to be a wave starting in Quebec, and now up in Ontario. And as we've talked before in other elections, elections in this country are won and lost in this province of Ontario. If Mark Carney is going to win Ontario, Quebec, Atlantic Canada, and actually I see BC starting to come up back a bit, you're looking at not a minority, you're looking at a majority Mark Carney election win here in another month or so.
Why do you call him an economic genius?
You look back at the 2008 recession back then and how he helped Canada get through that. And then with the Bank of England and the Brexit situation, he is an economic genius that I'm definitely going to be voting for.
Yeah.
Now, having said that, things can change in politics. As I've said to you, a month or two in politics is an eternity. He could mess up during the debate. If you look at John Turner back in 1984, he came out of that convention ahead in the polls. Not too many people are going to remember this, but Brian Mulroney knocked him out in the debate. There was a moment where there was talking about patronage. John Turner's like, I don't have any option, and Mulroney said, yeah, you do have an option, and that tanked his campaign. So that's always a possibility here. And if something weird like that happens, I could totally see, him falling apart. But if that doesn't happen, this is all about Donald Trump right now.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if you know who Nick Nanos is. He's a pollster. He was on CTV the other night.
I know who Nick Nanos is.
Yeah, he was basically like saying to Pierre Poilievre, like, saying that that Carney's trying to trick you and stuff. He was like joking, like he was laughing, saying, "Really, that's what you're coming back with? Like, you better change your campaign and start attacking like Donald Trump and coming up with a plan." I don't. I mean, you tell me. Are you looking at the numbers? Because the Conservatives are spiraling down fast.
Yeah, they are. They are. And look, as far as Mark Carney goes, look, the ammunition that's used against him is there's a few points that they're disseminating out there. One is they're calling him sneaky. They're saying that he's a carbon tax guy. That he will put the consumer facing carbon tax back on if given a majority government and if given the chance. They're saying that if he can't do that, then he will certainly get the carbon tax through large emitters anyway, and the user will pay, and we'll all pay eventually. They frame him as being an elitist, as a globalist, as a World Economic Forum guy. There's a lot of stories out there, if you want to find them, of people who and media that suggest he did a horrible job in Britain and that he was not well liked and not well received there at his time. So it all depends on, quite honestly, Ed, on what you think and what you believe and who you believe. And this is the time that we're living in. If fundamentally you like Mark Carney, you're going to find lots of reasons to Mark Carney. If fundamentally you don't like Mark Carney, you're going to find lots of reasons to not like him. It depends on what you're looking for. And this is the times that we're living in.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like I said, and I might still change my vote, but right now I'm going with Carney because he's going to be the best guy to fight against Trump. And the thing with the Conservatives, Todd, you ever see some of their things lately? Their ads are carbon tax Carney.
Yep.
So it's kind of like Sleepy Joe.
Yep.
Their slogan is Canada First. They're going to build he's had a thing there a couple of weeks ago, Poilievre. He's like in the north saying, I'm going to build like a
base
or something
a base. It's a base, a military base.
Sorry, yeah, that's right. A base. Yeah. So I'm going to build a base here. But I'm going to pay for it by killing all foreign aid. Well, who just killed all foreign aid in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Trump.
Yeah.
So everything he's doing is kind of like Trump, like he better change his tune, because people in Canada right now are not going to go for somebody they think are aligned with Donald Trump.
Well, and I would.
Do you disagree with that?
Well, no. What I would say is that there are a lot of people out there that resonates with. That messaging resonates with people. There are people out there who feel as though that we've got, and I believe that this country and any G7 country or any wealthy country has the responsibility to employ foreign aid. So but what I also will say is that I can understand why some people who look around and they see tents and homelessness and desperation and all of these affordability problems, and why some people might look at that and say, why don't we take care of this first? I get why some people would feel that way. I don't agree with it, but I get why they do, and that's going to resonate with more people than you think, Ed.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. But don't you agree right now, and things could change here. I think he'll call the election end of the week. We're looking at late April, early May for an election. But don't you think that don't you not think that the number one subject for this election is going to be who can take on Donald Trump?
Yeah, I believe that, but I was disappointed, Ed, to be honest with you, in the way that he in the news conference. And I get it; it was his first news conference, but he had this tone of deference when it comes to Donald Trump. Like one of the reporters said Trump, and he said it's President Trump, and like let's show him respect. And I want to see an edge. I don't think that we need to kiss his butt, quite honestly. And I don't know that if Mark Carney's modus operandi is going to be kiss Donald Trump's butt and pay deference to him, I don't know that that's going to get it done. I think Trump responds to people who are tough, and I don't know that Mark Carney's tough.
Yeah, the kissing the butt thing. I know what you're talking about. I hate to say this, but you almost have to sometimes do it. Like the NATO guy was with him there last week, and he basically was kissing his butt.
Yeah.
But I don't agree with Sean often, but I do agree with Sean. Like, if the USA wasn't part of NATO, boy, I don't think they could make it a go. So this guy who's running NATO, he's basically kissing Trump's butt because he knows he needs to keep him in there. You know what I mean?
But here's the problem, Ed. When I've dealt with bullies before and people like Donald Trump before, and you think it's going to get you kiss somebody's butt and they turn on you anyway. So I don't know that I don't know that that's going to work. But I hear
there's a fine balance.
Yeah, there's a balance. Listen, Ed, I got a boogie. Thanks for the call, pal.
Okay, thanks.
Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Jamie, hello.
How are you today?
I'm well. You?
Good. Listen, I liked listening to your previous caller. Seems like an intelligent, well thought out gentleman.
Yeah.
One thing I would like to add, and I have I don't know if I have I'm not going to make a prediction, but I have a fear. And the fear is that if we get another Liberal government, I think many people are not considering the fact that the ramifications that would have on the West. I don't think Canada is going to become the 51st state. I believe that you're going to see Alberta and Saskatchewan become the 51st and 52nd states, should a Liberal government get in power and be as hostile to them as the previous government has been for the last almost decade. They've been treated very, very poorly by the rest of Canada, and it would surprise me to the nth degree if many of the people that lived in those provinces have to be looking south, where it appears as though they're wanted, and saying, you know what, maybe we'll just go with where we're wanted. I have something else to add, and that's, if Alberta and Saskatchewan were to separate, I spent a decade living in BC, and I will tell you, anybody that's lived out there will also probably attest to this, that they identify more with Washington State and California than they do Manitoba or Ontario. So I think if we get a Liberal government, my fear, and this is only if they're as hostile to the oil sands as Canada has been for the last 9 years, my fear is that Canada is going to end at the Manitoba border. So I would like to just have people think about that a little bit, because, you know, whether Mark Carney is the best guy to deal with Trump or not, I don't know. The former UK Prime Minister Liz Truss raised quite a few concerns as to Carney's competency, and they say he ran the Bank of England, and apparently he was on the way out the door there before he decided to move to New York. and then now he's running for the Prime Minister of Canada. So, even if he's the best guy for dealing with Donald Trump, if he's as hostile to the West as Canada has been for the last 9 or 10 years, I would say that welcome to a new map. I think there's going to be a new map of Canada drawn and a new map of the states. So I would like to get those who are thinking of voting Liberal just a little something extra to chew on.
Okay, Jamie, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Regionalization and Western alienation. This is something that we've been dealing with for decades and decades and decades. I don't know that a Liberal election will result in the exodus of the Western state or Western provinces. I would suggest that wouldn't be the case. But look, I guess if you alienate for so much, anything's possible. You can only push a region so far. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. Raymond Plourde is the Wilderness Coordinator with the Ecology Action Centre and joins me for a chat. Raymond, thanks for doing this today. We appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Todd.
All right, so I initially reached out to you to talk about Northern Pulp, and I do want to get to that, but first I want to get your take on a story which you were quoted in the CBC, and I'm throwing it at you, but I know that you're well-versed in it, and that's why I'm doing it. I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Okay.
But it's about the province telling Nova Scotia to burn more wood to generate electricity. Biomass use helps forestry industry, but environmentalists say it contributes to climate change. So the bit of the story, Nova Scotia is directing the province's main electricity producer to ramp up biomass use starting immediately for the next 2 years. The Tim Houston government made a regulatory change that requires Nova Scotia Power to use 160 gigawatt hours of biomass each year until 2027. The new regulation builds on earlier directives from Nova Scotia Power's biomass use. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, it's another increase in the use of forest biomass to be burned in the two biomass generators that Nova Scotia Power and its parent company, Emera, own here in Nova Scotia. And biomass burning for electricity is extremely inefficient. These boilers can struggle to meet even 20% efficiency, which means that, if you burn 100 trees, only 20 of them result in captured benefit in the form of electrons for the grid, and 80% or 80 trees go up the stack with no captured benefit whatsoever. It's tremendously inefficient, but also the whole notion of burning trees is based on a simplistic calculation that if you burn a tree, if you cut a tree today and burn it in an electricity generator, that another tree will eventually grow back and recapture the carbon released when the trees were burned. The problem with that is it takes 100 years. There's a lag time. And also, there's a lot of carbon that is released from the forest floor, which is never counted. But the bottom line is biomass is counted as zero carbon emitting when it does, in fact, emit a lot of carbon. It actually takes more wood than coal or oil to generate the same BTUs to spin the turbines. And so it actually releases more carbon into the atmosphere than carbon or coal. And regardless, it's not counted at all. That is the flaw in biomass burning, is it pretends that there's no carbon emissions. And there are. And we don't have 100 years to wait for a theoretical tree burn today to be recaptured, the carbon, in another tree 100 years from now.
All right, so the fact that it's utilizing biomass itself, not good, not harvesting new trees, does that matter?
Well, now what you're referring to, Todd, there, I think, is sawmill residuals and silvicultural thinnings. But if we use those, it would be better to have a better purpose for those chips that are chipped in the woods or are the result of sawmilling residuals. It is an issue. That material is produced. It needs to go somewhere. A better place would be for some kind of manufactured product, like a chipboard or something like that. But if it must be burned, then small-scale local heating projects, or even your wood stove in your home, is a better place, because the rate of efficiency in a modern wood-burning appliance like a wood stove in someone's home, or a biomass boiler, say, attached to a library or a school or a hospital, would be reaching rates of efficiency of upwards of 90% captured benefit, which is a lot better than 20%. Regardless of what it's used for, burning wood material still needs to have the carbon counted. That's the big thing. It cannot be just labeled as carbon neutral or zero carbon emitting, when in fact it is emitting tremendous amounts of carbon.
All right, Todd Burgess, the executive director of the Forest Nova Scotia, says that Nova Scotia has an abundance of forestry residuals. We need opportunities to use that resource. And insufficient demand for low-grade wood has been an ongoing issue for the industry since 2020 closure of Northern Pulp, which was a major buyer of wood chips. Burgess said Nova Scotia needs new markets in order to manage forests following ecological forestry objectives. He said increasing Nova Scotia's power's biomass use would help woodlot owners do that. What's your response?
It provides a market for that sawmill residuals and for silvicultural thinnings. Unfortunately, it's also often abused by cutting trees and chipping them that don't have an otherwise useful or profitable commercial market. In other words, tree species that don't have a market are often called waste wood and run through the chipper anyway. But I don't disagree with Mr. Burgess insofar as sawmill residuals are being produced as a secondary or a byproduct of a primary resource use, and that is to create lumber, which we acknowledge is a good thing, and we want to support our family-run sawmills, and they need a place for this material to go. That is an issue. The solution is what we disagree on. Burning it in power plants is bad for the atmosphere, and it needs to be acknowledged that there is a lot of carbon released. As long as it's not counted as non-carbon emitting, then we're getting closer to the truth, whether it's burned for space heating or for electron generation. There's still carbon being released, and it needs to be counted, and that is our primary point. With regard to what to do with it, highest and best use should be the guiding principle, not like where can we just find a place to shovel this stuff and get rid of it. And of course, biomass is also a very low value market, so it doesn't really earn the woodlot owner or the sawmill that much. It would be better to have a better use for this material, which is being produced, and we do acknowledge that. The forest industry does need a place for these materials to go. The question is, what kind of use? And if it is to be burned, it has to be counted. The carbon release has to be counted. It is disingenuous to do otherwise.
Okay, shifting gears. Northern Pulp, the company behind a Nova Scotia mill that shut down 4 years ago amid environmental shortcomings, says it'll cost $2.5 billion to build a new cutting-edge plant on the province's southwest shore. But the company says the proposed project, which would require private and public funding, does not currently meet its required rate of profitability, and it wants until early May to secure funding. And of course, this site is on the Bowater Mersey Paper Company, which had how long was a mill at that? Decades. A mill sat there. Did it not operate it there, Ray?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Decades.
All right. So, what are your thoughts on this? I guess is this just thoughts in general? I suppose to start.
Well, I think that as I said a moment ago, it is true that the sawmill industry and small private woodlot owners trying to do ecological forestry or silvicultural thinning in their wood stands to improve their stands, that needs a place to go. And a pulp mill would be a higher and better use. It would produce a product as opposed to just burned for electricity, which is terrible. Mm-hmm. But what is being proposed here? Like, we were told as the public we would learn all the details of what is being proposed in the, I think it was 7 or 9 month study period that the company said it needed. But actually, it hasn't released any information about the details of said mill. They've only said last week that they are not reaching their 14% internal return with regards to profitability of a potential mill. But we're not learning a lot about the details of it. And so, some of this is still very murky. We noticed that last week they stopped referring to it as a mill and started referring to it as a bioresources hub. And they're talking about all kinds of things that are not pulp, things like biogas, biochemicals, and possibly an initiative, a bioenergy initiative aimed at greening Nova Scotia's electrical grid. Well, that sounds like another biomass plant to me, in all likelihood. So now there's more things going on here, apparently, than just a pulp mill. But with regard to the pulp mill itself, what they're saying to stakeholders, as I understand it, is that it will be one like the pulp mill in Pictou. That is to say, a bleached kraft pulp mill, which by its nature requires chemicals and a lot of water and to release that effluent somewhere into the environment. So that's a concern. If they were to go with the kind of mill that Bowater used to have, or that Port Hawkesbury Paper does have, a thermomechanical pulping mill, that would produce no liquid pollution and very little air emissions. And it would also yield a much higher yield of finished product, somewhere in the neighborhood of 90%, compared to a thermochemical bleach kraft pulp mill, which gets about 50% out of the manufacturing process. So it actually produces a lower yield. Also, like the mill itself, they're talking about 2.5 million tons. That's more than twice the size of the very big mill in Pictou, which was the largest in Nova Scotia. And I think it can be argued, its 50 years operation resulted in a significant over-harvesting of our forests for decades, leading to a very degraded forest, which is why we have so much so-called low-grade wood in this province now. So building a new mill that is 2.5 million ton capacity is way too big for our forest resource. And then when you start adding on other things like biogas and fuels and God knows, possibly a biomass burner, it could be more than that, 2.5 million tons. And that's too big. I think we need to right-size any facility which would use this material to the amount of sawmill residuals and silvicultural thinnings being produced by all of the other elements of the forest industry, such that they have a useful place to sell their residual products, while at the same time not overwhelming the forest ecosystem again and driving the quality and the age classes of our forest down, ever downward. So a mill that was maybe half the size of the old Pictou mill could in fact be supportable. It could be a thing that helps the forest industry that exists now, the sawmills in particular and the woodlot owners, while at the same time not overwhelming the forest ecosystem again here in the province and degrading our forests further. But there's a lot of open question marks here. And Todd, as you saw in last week's news, what they're saying is, nope, it's not financially feasible. They didn't really release a lot of details about the nature of their project, except adding suddenly bio products hub to the mix, which was hitherto unknown. I thought we were just talking about a pulp mill. They're also saying, essentially, it's not feasible, so we need to go and look for more money, and they're pretty clear that they're talking federal and provincial subsidies here. And the province has already offered like $100 million in industrial support. They've got a program that tops out at $100 million for large projects that they can provide subsidies for, as well as a 10% across the board payroll rebate. So that's already pretty generous. We're well over $100 million from the province. So clearly they're going to go after the feds and maybe squeeze the province more. And they're saying, in essence, that we are going to take 6 more weeks, I believe it is, or 5 more weeks, to see if there's some way to make it profitable to meet this 14% internal return. But they're clearly looking at governments to provide whatever shortfall that there may be to reaching that fairly generous internal rate of return. And otherwise, I guess they said in part of their statement that they are preparing for an orderly liquidation of their assets, including the forest lands that Nova Scotians loaned them $75 million to purchase. They will sell that and whatever all other assets they can to pay off creditors, and then they will leave the province. So it does seem like at a certain level this could be a negotiating tactic, Todd, where it's like, nope, we're ready to leave, unless you come up with more money.
Right.
And it sounds like it could be an attempt to squeeze the provincial and federal governments for more subsidy money.
Okay, Ray, we're out of time. Thanks for your insight. As always, appreciate it.
My pleasure, Todd. Anytime.
All right, take care. Raymond Plourde with the Ecology Action Centre. Housing Coalition releases plan to protect Canadians and fight housing crisis amid this trade war. We'll be back with that. Continuing with your calls, so it reaches is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Hello, Doug.
How you doing?
Doing well.
I just had an accident. I'm sorry, I can't talk.
Okay. All right. Take care of the accident. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Hello, Joyce.
Oh, hi. How you doing?
I'm well, you?
Good. I just had to call. I believe this 51st state is a distraction, and I'll tell you why. Because I went to church on Sunday, and had a lovely sermon, but the priest told me something kind of to the congregation that he had a letter from the bishop, and he was really struggling with, his anger, because reading the update from the bishop, he alluded that up in Ottawa, they are trying to pass 2 bills that will take the not-for-profit status off any organization that's anti-abortion. And he was clearly upset about that because, guess what? All Christian churches, or a lot of them, are anti-abortion.
Okay, what's the bill that you're talking about? Because I've not heard of this bill. So.
No, I haven't either. So that's why I'm saying
so
I believe this whole 51st state is a big distraction to a lot of stuff that's going on in Ottawa, that we need to keep an eye on the north here, folks. Like, I was not aware of this either, and neither was the priest. He got an update from the bishop that there's 2 laws, I think they're 230 and 229, that are being looked at to change. And he said, we have a lot of churches like in the diocese, and it would affect all those churches that are, anybody who's classified as anti-abortion would lose their non-for-profit status. And I think people should start looking a little bit more at the north and what's going on here in Ottawa and all these little laws that are trying to get passed, rather than down south, because I think people are starting to, pay too much attention to what's going on down there. I know it affects us, but we got to keep an eye on the ball up here too. So just these lovely liberals that I just heard two people talk. Oh, we're voting. You might want to rethink what's going on.
Okay,
here
here's a story that I'm reading from off the CBC website. I did a Google search, and it's the most recent one.
Yeah.
October 29th, 2024 says the federal government has introduced legislation that would require charities providing reproductive health services to state clearly whether they offer abortion or abortion referrals. Organizations that fail to clearly tell their clients whether they provide these services could risk losing their charitable status. The Minister for Women and Gender Equality said Tuesday the legislation is meant to combat the spread of misinformation by some charities that operate crisis pregnancy centers. So based on that, again, would require charities providing reproductive health services to state clearly whether they are. So I don't know that what you're saying is true, to be honest with you.
Well, according to the bishop.
Well, the bishop is not disseminating incorrect information, because based on what I just read, I don't think that that's true.
Well, I think there's more detail to that, because the priest indicated that it was quite a long explanation of what these actually mean. So that's what I'm saying. Like, I just wanted to alert people that this was happening, and it could happen to your church, that they could lose their non-for-profit status. That means a lot of help, a lot of fundraising, a lot of charitable donations to help new people getting, that would all be taxed. No, I don't believe that there's a move to remove charitable status from churches, Joyce. I don't believe that. Sorry. Well, maybe we can get somebody on who might know the details to this more than you and I.
Okay.
Because it really kind of upset me, and the priest was clearly. He said I had to pray over the weekend to slow my anger, because this is not. But it indicated that it sounded like that this could affect a lot of churches.
Okay, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. 902-405-6000. Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hey, how you doing, Todd?
I'm well.
Good. Just to shed some light on that, I'm a local pastor here in HRM of the church.
Yeah.
What the caller previous was talking about is in the budgeting process in Ottawa, there are recommendations that are made to the finance minister. And the latest recommendation list was something like almost 600 of them. But recommendations number 429 and 430, which were submitted by the Humanist Group in British Columbia, recommended that charitable status be revoked for any anti-abortion thoughts or beliefs, and that the promotion of religion, if that was an object of a church, that it would also lose their charitable status. But those are only recommendations that have been made and been submitted and been made, and that are forwarded as part of hundreds of recommendations. So the Minister of Finance would be responsible then for whether or not to act on those recommendations, to take them or not to take them. And because we have a limbo situation right now, there's it's crickets from Ottawa. So just to clarify it. So the caller is partially correct. If those recommendations were to be enacted upon and proposed in the budget, they would be devastating, to charities across Canada, because charities, typically, what is receded in terms of charitable giving, there's something like a 4 to 10 times effect, of good that's done in the community. But they're only recommendations that have been made to the minister, just to bring clarity.
Okay, beautiful, Dave. Listen, I appreciate it for offering the clarity. Appreciate it. Thanks, pal.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
All right, take care. All right, didn't get to all of it for that. I apologize, everybody. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. Northern Pulp seeking $2.5 billion in private public funding to build a new pulp mill. That and biomass helps forestry industry, but environmentalists say it contributes to climate change. We'll chat with Raymond Plourde when we come back. All right, in response to the trade war launched by the Trump administration, a coalition of leading Canadian organizations from across the housing system has come together to propose a policy plan to build resiliency, safeguard the housing industry, and protect Canadians. Joining us to discuss all of this is Pedro Barata, president of Habitat for Humanity Canada. Pedro, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good to be here, Todd.
All right, so yes, tell us more about the fight here and what organizations like yours are doing.
Thank you for this opportunity. Well, the current state of housing wasn't really serving the needs of Canadians prior to this trade war. So, if you were trying to pay the rent or trying to pay the mortgage, and for hundreds of thousands of people in Canada who are living on the streets, things were already pretty stressful. And what we see now is that some of the stresses on the housing system are only promising to get worse. So, as we look at stress on supply chains, on our workforce, on regulatory landscape, if you think about, anticipated costs of materials like steel, aluminum, lumber, those are very likely going to rise as a result of tariffs. And of course, that leads to more project delays, increased project costs, and even cancellations at a time when we can't really afford to slow down. And so our plan is about accelerating action and taking action that Canadians need.
All right, and that action, you've got 10 items here in which that you laid out here. Nate, let's go through a few of them anyway.
Okay, so let's start with the most urgent and most pressing, which is homelessness. 300,000 Canadians are projected to experience homelessness, unfortunately, across Canada this year. And we really have to start there, and we have to start with prevention of homelessness, and think about things like rent banks, so that when families are really stressed out at the end of the month, they can tap into a rent bank to close the gap and make sure that they don't lose their housing, and also helping people get off the streets through things like housing benefits and wraparound supports, so that you actually have a chance to build a good life and to build a future. So it starts there. Mm-hmm. We also have an opportunity to just build more housing, and especially more community housing that is within reach of Canadians' incomes. So think about not-for-profits, co-ops, affordable home ownership, like the kind of housing that Habitat for Humanity builds. These are all in dire need. Canadians are crying out for more of these options, and this is really an opportunity to speed that up. As we start to look at transitions in the economy as well, and maybe even impact on manufacturing, we've known for a long time that there's a demographic shift happening in the trades, and in the labor force that we need to build the housing that we need. And so doubling down on trades, on a skills agenda that really ensures that people who unfortunately find themselves in transition because of the trade war have a place to go to, so that they can have a good job and they can continue to contribute to the growth of our communities. And finally, there's GST. There's GST that's charged on things like new affordable home ownership on Habitat homes. That GST is quite a barrier in terms of our ability to build, and so removing some of those taxes, removing some of the red tape that gets in the way of moving quickly, those are things that governments can do right now, and that would go a long way to starting to shore up our housing system.
All right, how confident are you that governments are being proactive and listening and doing and implementing some of these things?
Look, I think every level of government has recognized in more than words and investments and in actions that housing is a top of mind issue for all Canadians who are really struggling to pay the bills. And we have seen investments, we've seen action, we've seen commitments by all levels of government. Frankly, we're just not doing enough, and this is really an opportunity for governments to double down and make sure that all of those feelings of unity and all of the urgency around the current situation really starts at home, quite literally, by ensuring that all Canadians have a safe, affordable place to call home.
Interesting, Pedro. Appreciate your time. Thanks for doing this today.
Thanks so much, Todd. Have a great day.
All right, take care. Pedro Barata, president of Habitat for Humanity Canada. Frustration with establishment parties leads a local candidate to run for the People's Party of Canada. We'll chat with Ryan Slaney when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, we've got an election in the offing. Exactly sure. We don't know when. Much speculation is that it'll certainly be called sometime this month and probably by the end of April, but we don't know for sure. Nonetheless, joining me here in studio is Ryan Slaney, running for the People's Party of Canada in the riding of Sackville-Bedford-Preston, which includes Beaver Bank, Fall River, and Enfield. Ryan, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so a bit about your background, I guess, to kick things off.
Yeah, so I'm a Bedford born and raised.
Pull the mic in close to your voice there. We want to be able to hear you.
Yeah, sorry about that.
There you go, no sweat.
Bedford born and raised. I grew up playing minor hockey out of Bedford. Went to St. Mary's for university, did my master's there. I worked for Bell Alliant for 10 years, and then I left Bell Alliant to go work for the Canadian Security Intelligence Service in Ottawa for 12 years. I kind of split my time there between serving in Ottawa and back here in Halifax. And in 2022, I left the public service to join the private sector, where I still am today, working in cybersecurity.
Okay, interesting. How did politics get into your veins?
That's a good question. I've always just been interested in it. Working with the service in Ottawa and seeing how the federal government works, looking at kind of geopolitical activities and alliances between different governments and investigations into adversaries really kind of sparked my interest, and I really liked it. So not only was it work, but it was a personal interest as well.
Okay, how did you? What aligned you with PPC?
The main thing is more disenfranchisement with the establishment parties, essentially. So I'm a proponent of seeing Canada strong and free, and I just don't see us being able to do that with how the establishment parties have us set up right now as a country. A lot of the solutions that the PPC have proposed have been ahead of the curve. So, for instance, breaking down interprovincial trade barriers is something that the PPC has called for almost a decade, since its inception. And that's now just something that people are saying, oh, maybe we should do that now that the tariffs have come in. Same thing with the East to West pipeline. The PPC has been, proponents of developing our energy infrastructure and our energy development in this country in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way. Again, that's something that's now being looked at, and it's something that the PPC has looked at for quite a while. So I agree with a lot of the fiscal policies that they have in terms of turning the economy around and really unleashing the resource sector that we have here in Canada. Canada is one of the richest resource countries in the world. We have an incredible amount of resources at our disposal that, if we develop in a sustainable way, can really help our economy here, and we just haven't been doing that.
Immigration's another key issue for your party?
Yeah, immigration is definitely a key. So the PPC believes that mass immigration is the primary factor behind the inflation crisis that we're seeing right now. So essentially, what happens is we saw the Liberal government after COVID bring in a significant amount of newcomers, and that put a massive demand on our existing goods and services. So, you got more people looking for groceries, looking for houses, and that's more demand. And simple economics dictates that the price now goes up for this, and we're seeing that. Couple that with massive government spending and a huge national debt, and the inflation just goes up even higher. And now the big concern is, of course, tariffs and how much more expensive that's going to make life for Canadians.
What do you think when it comes to misinformation about the PPC is out there that every time you hear that it gets you upset or makes you concerned?
Yeah, I think it's people that are listening to mainstream media and they're just not doing their research. They're letting themselves be influenced by people that they trust, and they're not sitting down and actually reading through the platform. And I admit I'd be one of those people. I associated the PPC with the freedom protest, and when I actually read the policies, they made sense to me, and I agree with them. And I've since gone on to meet a lot of the people in the party, and they're Canadians just like everyone else, and I think they have a right to be concerned about the way that their country's going. Mass immigration obviously is something that's been talked about on your show a lot, and whether or not it's actually truly served the needs of Canadians. I believe immigration is necessary at responsible levels. I don't think anyone would argue that, and the party does as well. But right now, what we have is a massive, massive increase in demand on housing stock, on goods and services that have drove the prices incredibly high. And we need to take another look at that system to make sure that it's not just working for big businesses that are looking for an abundance of cheap labor, but Canadians who are looking to pay their bills.
Are you concerned that in this day and age, when people make associations and they're quick to judge and label, that they would say Ryan Slaney running for the People's Party of Canada, and therefore it's fair to make a bunch of assumptions about you, and I won't even name them because you know them. Is that something that you've experienced?
Not yet. I know there's people that feel very strongly against some of the policies.
Yeah.
But again, I'm curious to whether or not those people have sat down and read the platform and truly understand them, or just going on what they heard. Yes, it's definitely something I considered. What people would judge me, but at the end of the day, my friends and family, they know who I am. They know what I'm all about.
Yeah.
The people I work with know that I've served my country for years, and I'm not somebody that really goes out there and wants to spread any kind of hate in any manner whatsoever.
Right.
What I want to spread is hope. In terms of there is a realistic solutions to the problems that we face here that really aren't that difficult to implement. And I believe that the PPC has laid it out in a very simple manner that yes, there's some big changes and some bold decisions Canadians need to make.
What are some of the biggest and boldest changes that Canadians need to make?
So the biggest one, again, we talked about mass immigration. The PPC wants to implement a moratorium, a temporary moratorium on immigration, essentially so we could bring the cost of goods and services down. You can see just with that little tweak of the immigration numbers that the Liberals did that the rents are already coming down. So we made a much bigger change and brought those levels down. The housing would come back down, the apartments would come back down, make life a bit more affordable again. That would allow us time to determine what exactly the right number of immigration would be. And right now, that number that we believe would be reasonable would be between 100 and 150,000 immigrants per year. So that's the big differentiator. I know the Liberals haven't committed to any changes to immigration right now other than little tweaks. The Conservatives, I think Poilievre threw out 200 to 250 in an interview, but there's no platform for the Conservatives yet, unlike the PPC that it's been out for years. And you can go read it.
What are your thoughts on Pierre Poilievre?
I don't have a lot of thoughts about him because I don't really follow him that much. Other than I hear the argument where people say, a lifelong politician doesn't know anything. I take a little bit of exception to that. I do feel that the man has served his country. He's obviously smart. He wouldn't be where he is. He could probably do quite well in the private sector, but he's chosen a life of service to his country, which I admire. But I do think that his policies are really dependent on popular opinion. And he hasn't really stuck to one message. You see him chasing, exit tax, build the homes. He's constantly changing his message to pander to different, groups and special interests. And I don't like that changing values. So to me, I much prefer a solid set of principles and values that the policies are based on, which allows them to stay static, versus, the dynamic shifting conservative policies that are constantly chasing public opinion.
Why do you think that the PPC has not kind of expanded outside of its influence yet? And maybe you disagree that it has, but that's my perception.
No, you're right. Obviously, the mainstream media is very reluctant to talk about the PPC. That's one of the major problems that we have.
Have you been invited on any other shows?
I've been interviewed for an online publication,
which I read, which is good.
Yeah. So and I'm available. I'd love to discuss politics anytime. I think the mainstream media is very reluctant. I mean, you see that reflected in the Leadership Debate Commission that they're excluding Maxime Bernier from it. They changed the rules at the last minute to exclude the PPC, which was quite devastating to us as a party because Maxime is an incredible debater. And I think if he was exposed to people and actually heard the ideas, a lot of them would understand it, at least be able to make a decision on or know that there's an alternative out there. But the PPC is a real party. We have 320 candidates ready to go in the next election, which I believe is only second to the Conservatives, who have a higher number right now. We're going to be putting a candidate in pretty much every single riding. We had 5% of the popular vote in 2021, and that was double what the Greens had. Now they got seats and we didn't, but it's still showing that there are a bunch of Canadians that are interested in this party.
Yeah. Well, I'm a believer in democracy, and I'm a believer in giving anybody a chance, right? And I think that's we're better off to have conversations with people than not, in my opinion.
I think you're right, and the beauty about Canada is right now we've got 5, 6 major parties.
Yeah.
We do not want to be like United States where there's only 2 choices.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's the beauty of the Canadian system, is that we do have choice, and I just want to remind people that there's not just the Liberals and the Conservatives in this race. There is alternative parties out there.
All right. So, how do you feel your chances are is this a protest candidacy? Do you feel you get a chance to win? What's your takeaway on that?
My main goal is raising awareness, just to tell people that there is another party out there. There's another view. The PPC isn't scared of talking about taboo subjects and having opinions on them, whether or not you agree with them or not. That's up for debate. But no, it's not a. I'm serious about the campaign. I really want to increase awareness. If I'm able to increase, the popular vote within my riding, I'd be extremely happy with that. But at the same time, I'm realistic. The change and a new party to get seats takes a long time. It takes a lot of effort. Takes a lot of campaigning and canvassing. And we really just started that in 2019. So it will take some time.
Will Maxime Bernier be in the area campaigning?
We hope so.
Yeah.
He's the most available politician that you'll find. I mean, he'll do any show that asks him to. He makes himself available. He's literally working 24/7. He's extremely generous with time for candidates. If you ever need to talk to him or need him for an event, he's the first one that will he'll clear a schedule and he'll be there.
Who are you running against in your riding? The incumbent is no longer, right?
No, so the riding changed actually. So the future riding will be Sackville-Bedford-Preston, what's called. So it's basically Bedford without West Bedford, almost all Sackville, and then kind of wraps around the Dartmouth riding out to like Minesville. So it's an interesting geographic. So I'm aware right now there is a Liberal candidate and there's a Conservative candidate, but I do not believe the NDP and the Greens.
So there's no incumbent?
No, there's not. Not for that riding.
What are your thoughts on Mark Carney?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. How much time do you have?
Yeah, well,
so
a bit of time.
I don't know. I personally think he's been the man behind Trudeau, kind of pulling the strings on the Trudeau puppet for the last 5 years. I think that's had a massive impact on our economy. If you look at some of the decisions that have been made, I think he's really good at collecting, trophy titles and special assignments and huge salaries and big expenses. But I don't think he's very good at results. And I think if you look at some of the feedback of the places that he's worked, they haven't been that great. I'm curious as to why his first order of business hasn't been to call an election. It was to take the country's jet out for a spin over Europe. I think I really can't fathom why his first order of business is not to go directly to the States.
Well, because obviously he wanted to do a victory lap, right, and be able to shake hands with Macron and other glitterati world elite. I would say that's pretty evident, right?
I would agree that he's going back to his globalist roots, talking to his European buddies, and kind of showing off the Canadian Prime Minister's jet with really no mandate from the people to do that. Essentially, he's a caretaker government right now, but acting like he's in charge with absolutely no mandate. And in terms of the election, I know you're talking about that earlier today, whether or not it would be called. I'm not so sure. Right now, I think 50-50.
Really?
Yeah, because Jagmeet Singh has said he's really wavered from his commitment to bring down the government when it goes back. He's said that he's willing to work with Carney to bring in some sort of economic plan to deal with tariffs and to pass legislation providing tariff relief.
Wow.
So he's wavering on that quite a bit. And, clearly Mark Carney enjoys, jet setting around as the PM.
Yeah.
Why not kind of make that go a bit longer? And really, he has until next fall to call the election. So he can bring the House back. He can let the NDP support him. He'll eventually need to run for a seat, and conveniently there is a by-election scheduled in Halifax next month, so that could be very interesting if that's the way he wants to go.
Yeah, I think the Liberals already have a candidate for that by-election, though. So.
Yeah, they do, but I mean, I don't think it's unheard of that
they would step aside.
A little switch, yeah.
Wow. Anything else before I let you go that you want to get out there that you want people to know about?
Yeah, I think that it's important to know, especially for the people that are going to be in my riding, is when you hear what I'm saying, I want you to realize that I spent a lot of time researching everything that I say to make sure that it's factual. I'm not somebody that just throws stuff out there and because it sounds good or I know it polls properly. So I encourage you, every time you hear me talking or you see something, please fact check it. But not just me, everyone. Every politician you hear saying something, go online, look it up, make sure what they're saying actually makes sense.
Right.
Because there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of generalization about how things work, tariffs, for instance, the economy. So make sure you do your homework. And when you go to vote, make sure that you're voting your values.
Okay. Ryan, appreciate you coming in. If people want to know more about you, they can check you out online.
Yep. BrianSlaney.ca. You can Google me, Google the PPC. I'm on X, and I'm available by email. So if you have any questions or comments or just want to discuss politics, hit me up.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Todd.
Take care. Ryan Slaney running for the People's Party of Canada in the riding of Sackville-Bedford-Preston. We'll be back. All right, a bit of time to the top of the hour. Just share some thoughts, maybe some emails. And first of all, when it comes to inviting people on the show and having a contrast in people and a contrast in point of view, I think that is a responsibility that we have to do so. This is what it's all about. That's why I invited Ryan Slaney on. I hadn't met him. I didn't know him. Somebody sent his name along, a friend of mine, and suggested that he'd be a good guest and well-spoken gentleman, quite seriously, running for the People's Party of Canada. So I think that there's too much prejudging out there going on. People say, oh, somebody's running for the BBC, Max Burn, that's the whatever, and make all kinds of assumptions. And I would say that the same goes for the other end of the political spectrum. Some would say a Green Party candidate, fringe, lefty, whatever, don't give them the time of day. No, those are the people that you also want to have on. It's the contrast that works and why this country works. It's contrast. And I think Ryan made a great point. In the United States, you've got Republicans and Democrats, and that's it. You're in one camp or the other, and there's no, and look, there's some moderates. You use that term moderates, but for the most part, it's very polarized, as we all know. So I think that our level of tolerance, to use that term, for people with differing points of view needs improvement, quite seriously. I really think that we need to work on that as a country and as individuals. It's not my intention to preach here. I guess if I'm coming across as being preachy, I apologize. But I think that we desperately need to dial things back and listen to one another from time to time. And we can learn from each other as well, because there are aspects of the People's Party of Canada and their platform that make sense. I don't agree with all of it, obviously, but I think that we can learn something from exposing ourselves to different points of view, just like we had Raymond Plourde on the show earlier, who's with the Ecology Action Centre, and some would suggest that they're a special interest group or whatever terminology you want to use. Again, people like to toss labels around all the time. But I think it's important that we listen to different points of view. So that's why we do what we do. This is what makes this show different. Paul Palango's another example. Paul Palango's a guy who I have on the show. I don't know any other media that has Paul on the show, which seems strange to me. Of course, you know Paul Palango, author, investigative reporter, been writing with the RCMP for a very long time, but he's confrontational. He's willing to stick his neck out and does so and backs up what he says. But for whatever reason, he's got a harder edge that most of the media in this city, anyway, shy away from. But I think that's the reason to have them on. So just some thoughts on that. Anyway, thanks for all your emails as well. I get lots of emails and keep sending them. Todd.Veinotte@rci.rogers.com. That's the way to reach us via email. Todd.Veinotte@rci.rogers.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Thanks to Vanessa Van Den as well on the other side of the glass and the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.